Frank's Red Hot is the perfect blend of flavor and heat, so you can use an entire bottle to make recipes like buffalo chicken dip or buffalo nachos, or even things that don't start with buffalo. Frank's Red Hot, I put that on everything.
Are you ready, Craig?
Yeah, I think I'm ready.
I think I'm ready.
All right, and hello everyone. Welcome to episode 9 of Podcast versus Everyone. I am Craig Powers, and with me, as always, is Jeff Newser. And Jeff, how are you doing tonight?
I'm awesome. You know, big week. Cougars about to go win 4 games and get to the NCAA tournament. So, no, just kidding.
Yeah, obviously.
No, I'm actually really good because Gonzaga just lost.
Yeah,
Gonzaga
just right
lost.
before this podcast started, really.
Right before it started, I watched them lose to St. Mary's while scoring approximately 36 points.
Yeah, it was like
That was pretty great.
Vintage, like Tony Bennett and Mark Few battle.
I know, Gonzaga all running around like, we're not winning by 40 points. What do? We don't know what to do.
Yeah, they won. I think they were up by 50 in their semifinal at
Yeah.
one point.
Yeah.
And they've just been rolling through.
Oh, yeah. They've just been destroying everyone.
I hate to say it, but it's probably good for them. But
it probably is, but screw them
but
anyway.
It's great. It's great.
Sorry if we have any listeners who are Cougs. I'm sorry if we have offended you, but we're not really sorry that we have offended you. So we hate Gonzaga, and we don't care who knows it. So fuck Mark Few and that little weasel, and I don't care if you don't like it.
Yep. And hey, St. Mary's stole a bid from someone probably. They were on the bubble.
How about that?
Yeah.
I think they were probably off the bubble.
Yeah.
Pretty I mean, maybe if they had played, had lost a close one, maybe, someone talks themselves into the idea of St. Mary's being on the bubble. But yeah, good for them. Good for Randy Bennett. Everybody seems to hate St. Mary's too, so that's cool. And so we get St. Mary's and Gonzaga in the tournament, which I guess is good. I don't know.
Yeah, the WCC power.
Yeah.
So they're there might be more WCC teams in the tournament than the Pac-12, so that will be interesting.
I'd say that's a pretty high probability, actually. Yeah. I mean, St. Mary's has a guy named Cougs, so I can't. I can't. Really, I mean, it's not spelled like Bob Cousy. This guy's name is spelled Kuhse. But watching him play, it's kind of hilarious. He looks like a 1950s basketball player. And I'm not just talking about the fact that he's short and white. It's like the way he dribbles is like he dribbles with the ball like really low to the floor. Like, like those, and like he kind of weaves in and out of players like those old, Bob Cousy videos that you've seen, or I've seen anyway, because I like watching that old stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Okay, he's cool by me. His name's Cougsy. That's all right. Kind of like a beer koozie too.
Yeah.
Let's talk about beer.
Yeah, so I know, Jeff, that it was your birthday this weekend, and you had plenty of beer. I don't think you're drinking one right now. I haven't heard any sips, but I know you have plenty to talk about after this weekend, and I know you had pretty high potency beers. So talk about one of them.
Yeah, so actually it was I was out for a friend's birthday. So my birthday is actually on Wednesday. So when you all listen to this, if you listen to it on Wednesday, it will be my birthday. Happy 42 to me. Woo. And I'm very like it's kind of old young. It's like I'm not old, but I'm not young, and I guess that's the very definition of middle age, right? I don't know. Anyway, so we were out with a friend, and we started out. It was her birthday, so we were out celebrating her birthday. With their husband, and they listen to the podcast. So hi, Kurt. Hi, Megan. We were out at the Rhine House in Tacoma, which is a Bavarian themed bar and tap room. And so went there and had a beer, and luckily I was able to find a nice Holy Mountain beer there, and then after that they were going to go somewhere else which didn't have great beer, and we were able to convince them to go to the place back here in Puyallup, Rainier Growlers, which is my favorite place to go to drink beer. And we got there, and I noticed that they had a number of large beers on tap. One of which was Avery's Uncle Jacob's Stout. And if you've never had Uncle Jacob's Stout, it's about a 15% stout. And so the first time I had Uncle Jacob's Stout was about 2.5 years ago, down in Boulder, Colorado, where Avery Brewing is located. And I was with Craig and PJ. And I don't think BA made it to the brewery, did he?
Oh no,
They got in. BA and Katie got in late. Yeah, they got in late. And my buddy Joe and my other buddy Brady, and we all went to Avery. And so I had some Uncle Jacob's Stout, and needless to say, they were 10-ounce pours, and I may have had more than 2 10-ounce pours, including the other beverages that I sampled that night. And I'm not probably a great one to tell you how the rest of the night went, because everything's kind of fuzzy for me. And so I was, but I do remember I'm not feeling great by the end of the night, and not drinking very much. Not drinking very much the rest of the weekend at the football game. So anyway, it was good times to find that at Rainier Growlers. Luckily for me, Rainier Growlers only did it in 5-ounce pours, so I got a 5-ounce pour of that. And then also had a 5-ounce pour of Avery's Tweak, which I actually liked better. There was a little more coffee to it. Like you and I were talking about, kind of balances out the booziness a little better. Yep. Really liked that. 2 really, really awesome, high alcohol beers. If Craig had not used the Gardner Minshew Naked Jockstrap, stretching rating, I would have used it on those, because I love both of them. I was really excited to find them at Rainier Growlers, and I don't like spending like $15 on a 12-ounce bottle that I probably don't want to drink the whole thing. So it was kind of nice to find it on tap, and nice little 5-ounce pours. So that was an interesting night. I remember the Avery setup is, there's like 3 or 4 different places you can get a beer, which is cool.
So, and then one of them, I remember, so there's the front bar, and they had, I think, like Tweak or some other big beer there. And then they had the bar that was like in the gift shop sort of area, and you could get another big beer there. And I remember, to get Uncle Jacob's, this huge stout that's gonna like drunk you up, you had to like walk across this catwalk to this like back bar in their big, because they have a huge brew house, and you go to you walk down this catwalk to the end, and they have this like bar in the back, and that's where so like to have like multiple pours of Uncle Jacob's, we had to like take this trek every time, right, from our table in the front to the back. And I remember I just kept buying I just wanted, like, I was getting everything to sample, and I was, Jeff, try that. You got to try this one too. You got to. This one's only 10%. It's no problem. Right. So we were having fun.
Yeah, and the other thing was, I'm fairly certain. So the Uncle Jacob's I just had was the 2018, I think. Yeah. And it was 15%. I have a vague recollection of whatever the 2016 Uncle Jacob's that we drank that night was something upwards of 17 or 18.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I'm
gonna see if I can find it.
I'm gonna just I'm gonna look it up right now for you. So 2016 was at 17%. So okay. Yeah, because that's when you said 15, I'm like, oh, they've dialed it back a little bit. 15.9 though. So it's
yeah.
So yeah, that was a little, and then some of the Tweaks are always up there. They make some big, when they make their barrel aged stouts, they make them enormous.
Yeah, and it was awesome.
Yeah, that was a fun night. Part of a fun weekend, regardless. The Cougs lost, but still, it was fun traveling.
Still a fun weekend. Yeah. Highly recommend, by the way, anybody who's thinking. I know that you can't go down there this year because we don't play in Colorado this year, but anybody who's considering making that trip, is a really fun trip. Boulder's a cool town, and Folsom Field is just a really neat venue, and the people in Boulder were pretty nice, except for the one old guy who almost tried to fight me. But other than that, Everybody else was super chill, and yeah, it's a really fun place to go to a game. It's like this crazy like liberal college town meets country western, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I had to, speaking of the people, I had a kid because they, which was crazy enough, like it was almost exciting because they beat us and then they rushed the field.
Right.
And then we were walking out. I was frozen to the bone.
Yep.
Like,
It was cold.
it's that thin air cold. It's just getting, once the sun goes down up there, it gets so cold. And we were getting to that point by the end of the game. But this kid walks by. We're just like looking for a warm place to go. And this kid walks by and he's like, sorry, we rushed the field. And he was like really genuine about it. I was like, man, that's okay, man. No one ever rushes the field on us. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Yeah,
Avery,
I felt good for them. They were nice. So anyway, and Avery was great.
yeah,
Other
Avery
than
was
me,
good.
I remember I got irrationally angry with the server about something very stupid, and everybody had to tell me to shut up and go away.
Yep, I remember that. That was several giant stouts in.
Yeah.
Um,
That was good times.
yeah, yeah, had all the fun stuff. Um, yeah, so I am drinking a beer currently. I tweeted it out before the podcast. It is a beer from DeGard Brewing. So DeGard Brewing is in Tillamook, Oregon. And I'll get into this beer in a second, kind of explain what they do. So I'm drinking a beer they make called the Purple Creek, described as a spontaneous wild ale aged in oak barrels with black and red raspberries plus Montmorency and Morello cherries. Montmorency cherries are very popular to use in beer. I don't know why, but so are Balaton cherries. I think they have like a tartness because if you use like you don't see very many Rainier cherry beers or anything like that because I think they're a little too sweet, but have too much fermentable sugar and stuff in there. But yeah, so this has got two different types of raspberries, two different types of cherries. It's a very, very deep, sorry to say it, purple color. It's obviously called the Purple Creek.
I feel betrayed right now.
I know, right? It's a bad color, but it's a good beer. So when I've talked about spontaneous fermentation before. I want to see if you were listening, Jeff. What's spontaneous fermentation?
That's where you kind of leave it open to the air, right? And kind of whatever settles in there. Is that close? Yeah.
Yeah. So spontaneous fermentation
Pass the test.
a little bit different from open fermentation, is that where you have the same big tanks, but they don't have a lid. But spontaneous fermentation, you actually you put it in a. DeGard has a big cool ship. It's a tradition from Lambics in Belgium, and basically it's big flat thing, so you get as much of the liquid exposed to the natural yeast in the air as possible, and you leave the windows open, so
that's cool.
You're letting everything come in. So yeah, they brew all their beers with spontaneous fermentation, and they make all their beers now in that sort of lambic style where you're doing spontaneously fermented beer, then aging it in oak, and then blending multi-years of the vintages together, and then possibly aging them on fruit and all that thing like that. In the past, they kind of made their money starting out with because you can't start out and rely on 3-year-old beers, like you wouldn't be able to survive. So
Right.
they would make these spontaneously fermented Berliner Weisses. So Boo was kind of the core beer. It was just like a 2% tart wheat ale, and then so Boo's named after their cat. And I'm actually drinking a glass. They've made a few times. They've made a glass that has a little cartoon picture of their cat Boo on the glass, so it's called a Kitty Boo glass. So they made this series of Boo beers, which they don't make anymore, which a lot of them are fantastic. But now it's all these multi-year vintages and stuff, and kind of some of the old DeGard heads miss the more simple, quick-made booze because you could get them for like, and I know like back then you could go there and you could get a bunch of these bottles for like $5 to $8 for like the 750 milliliters.
Yeah.
Now it's more 12 is probably the cheapest one, and then something like this is more up around 18 because it's just such a long process. But yeah, they're a pretty interesting brewery down there in Tillamook. So if you go down there for some cheese, you can go get some really nice beer, really different, unique beer as well. I know you've been down there, Jeff.
Yeah, you got to drive pretty far out of the way to find them too. They're like out past like an airport, like not like an airport, like
Well,
like a rural
actually,
airport.
they've
They have
opened
a
up.
tap room now.
Yeah, they've opened up downtown to whatever you want to
Oh,
call it,
nice,
in the middle of town now. So
nice.
yeah, it's
Which
a
it
lot
still
easier
isn't
to
much of a
find.
town, but
And the Tillamook cheese factory, I think, is reopened now. It was
hell
closed for a
yeah,
bit.
yeah. You
So
haven't lived until you've had a Tillamook grilled cheese and tomato soup
uh,
lunch.
yep, yeah. So now two reasons to go to Tillamook. Um,
Really, the
but
only two, but that's okay.
yeah, hey, the coast isn't far.
Yeah, but
Um,
DeGard really is great. DeGard, like if you're into tart beers at all or anything like that, yeah, they really do make incredible ones. Find someone to share it with probably, but
yeah, yeah, and
or
to that
have some
point.
Rolaids on hand.
Yeah, to that point, they can get pretty acidic. This one is not so bad so far, but I'm not too far into it. I split the bottle with Amanda uh, just because I didn't want to drink a 750 milliliter of tart beer, because their stuff has kind of went through this fluctuation, and because of the nature of how they make the beer, there's the different this is batch 4 of this particular beer, the Purple Creek, and then they can kind of vary up and down in their in their kind of acidity, and I know some of their more recent batches have been seen as a little bit more acidic. I've had some long friends who've been longtime fans, and they're kind of not really into it as much. I mean, a lot of DeGard stuff has been acidic in the past, but I think when you first get into sour beers and you're younger, maybe that acidity kind of bothers you less because you're
Yeah.
not prone to getting. But once you've been in the craft beer game and gained a few pounds, and suddenly that 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 stomach acid starts coming shooting back up your esophagus on a regular basis. It's harder to do the highly acidic beers. This one's not too bad. I mean, there's some that the first drink you have, like a lot of Cascade Brewing beers and stuff, or like you just the first sip is just like you're like, oh God. This one is not that bad, especially considering it has cherries. Cherries can make things pretty acidic sometimes, but this one's pretty good. I'm enjoying it. It doesn't have a ton of funk, but it's also pretty young. It was bottled in January. So a lot of like, if you bought an actual lambic from Belgium, like you probably would never drink something that soon. But I had a friend pick this up for me. He was down there, and yeah, I don't get a ton of funk. There's a lot of fruit on the nose, like especially the raspberries, and then a little bit of cherries, and then they kind of work together. It's got a pretty nice body to it for a sour beer. Like it's not super thin. It's got a little creaminess to it, I think, because of all the fruit in there. Um, Overall, it's pretty dang good. We don't have a rating system. For now, I'll just rate this based on number of adorable uh, kitty boos and adorable kitties like on my glass. So I'd probably go like 4 out of 5 if I'm just sticking to integers there. Um, 4 out of 5 adorable kitties. But yeah, if you have an idea for how, because we're kind of retiring the Gardner Minshew system, we did like 16 of those. That was enough.
We kind of exhausted that.
Yeah, we didn't want to get into like, well, you remember the third quarter, 2nd and 10, he kind of dropped back, he hit Calvin on a little out, and he picked up 4 yards, and yeah, that's how good that beer was. No, but yeah, so we're kind of exhausted that. So we have an email address. It's called podcast versus everyone, vs everyone at gmail.com. If you have an idea for how we should rate the beers, go ahead and send us an email with that idea. Also, if you have any other questions that you have for us, let us know. I think we're gonna do open up a Twitter account for this as well. So we'll tweet that out on the Cougs Center account and my at the Craig Powers account. But yeah, so if you have an idea on how you want us to rate the beer, I'd love it if we just had a different one every week. Let us know because I'm fresh out of ideas, but I still have plenty of beer to drink. Apologize for a purple beer this week.
That's all right. You're forgiven.
It just sounded really good. So I wouldn't drink, and I would never drink this during football season, so I got to drink it sometime.
There you go. That works. I mean, it's, every once in a while we got to have purple things like beer or cough syrup.
So Fremont just released their Brew 3000. This amazing barley wine, and it's a beer I'd love to take to like tailgates and Pullman and stuff, but it's got big purple wax on the label, or like big purple wax on it. So I'm like, no, that's staying home. That's not going to Pullman. Because I thought it'd be a great beer to bring out to the spring game, but I'm like, no, like pink, wax, red, crimson.
No. Sorry. Gonna put that one back in the cellar.
Yeah. Well, that 10 back in the cellar. What? No.
What?
So speaking of spring football, we've been doing our series on just random positions that we find interesting, and now we're going to do one that covers 5 different positions, and that's the defensive backs. So coming off of last year, WC returns their 2 starting safeties and a starting cornerback. So you're probably thinking, why the heck would you do this? But there's actually the nickel cornerback. You lose a very important guy in Hunter Dale, and then on the other side cornerback, you have you lose Darrien Molton and Sean Harper. Sean Harper played 4.5 games, I think, or 5.5 games last season. But those are the 2 positions you got to fill. And Jeff, looking at the roster, it's looking like it's probably going to be some JUCO transfers, right?
Yeah, I mean, what's kind of crazy is the way that they've loaded up on DBs in the last couple classes.
Yeah.
Just trying to land as many dudes as possible, which I think, you and I had kind of heard that maybe when Tracy Clay showed up, that maybe he was not super thrilled with the DBs that were on the roster. And I think, that was evidenced by, signing some JUCO guys the last couple of years. And this year they went super crazy on JUCOs, signing, I think, 4 JUCO defensive backs.
Yeah. And I think they're all already in Pullman.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Plus we got the last chance you kid.
Yeah. So, I mean, they, so I think that tells you a little bit about what, Tracy Clay's thought about the guys that were coming back. I think he liked Harper, and then, you lose Molton, you lose Dale, you lose Harper. Marcus Strong was, good, obviously, in flashes. The Alamo Bowl was great.
Yeah.
Right? That was awesome.
Yeah.
But, he's still on the small side.
Yeah.
And I think it seems pretty clear by looking at the guys that they've recruited that they prefer bigger. I mean, if you look at when I did the table of all the recruits, I just put DB on anybody who was in the secondary. I didn't try to figure out who's going to be a safety and who's going to be a corner. And just kind of going down the heights there, you've got Bryce Beekman 6'2", Armani Archie 6'1", Derek Langford 6'2", Shaman Moore 6 foot, Gatlin Grisso 6'1". The only one that's under 6 feet is Daniel Isom. But when you watch him play, he's really athletic. So he's a guy who I think can sort of get off the ground to contest balls. So, and maybe they, envision him as I don't know, something else. But it's just, it's pretty clear that Clay's, as we saw, he's going to ask a lot more out of his corners than
Right.
Alex Grinch ever did.
Right.
And he needs those guys to be a little longer, a little tougher, a little more physical, and not just able to, drop back 10 yards and then rally to the ball and then, just wait for the opposing team to make a mistake. And, and I don't know that one is necessarily, better or, Alex Grinch coached a hell of a defense here and, Tracy Claeys coached a hell of a defense here last year. And so, it's just the way you want to do stuff. And so I tend to think that, but I tend to think that both the corner positions are going to be open in addition to the nickel. And I wouldn't be shocked if there was a little bit of a competition next to Jalen Thompson. I don't think Skylar Thomas came along quite as quickly as everyone would have liked.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, obviously Jalen Thompson is secure in his role. Yeah, and like you said, Marcus Strong, they rotate corners too. It's not because of injury last year. I think you saw Molton and Strong get a lot more time, but you saw other guys play, and I think Harper would have because Molton was kind of rotating as the third outside corner until Harper went down, and then he kind of was the obviously main guy out there who teams love to throw to, and then which was exposed later in the season, of course. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think Harper was far and away the best cornerback they had last year.
Oh yeah, I don't think it was close.
He didn't play the bulk of the Pac-12 season, so. Are you
Which
really?
is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah. He if you watch Utah, he went down in that game and he grabbed his shoulder, and then I don't know, magic whatever, played against Oregon State. I assume he re-injured it against Oregon State because it was his shoulder that was clearly hurt when you'd see pictures of him later. So so because after Oregon State he didn't play again, so not even after the long layoff for the bowl game, so he must have had something pretty nasty happen. So obviously we're all speculating.
No, he was happy and healthy, man.
No, he was very happy and healthy. He just chose not to play.
Very happy, very healthy, and very arm in a sling.
Yeah, there's days when I'm feeling pretty good and I'm just like, it's a shoulder sling day. Just stick that thing in there.
You're like flipping through your clothes in the closet. You're like, Cougar sweatshirt, Cougar hoodie, Seahawks jacket, Mariners shirt. Oh, I got it. Shoulder sling.
Shoulder sling. It's a shoulder sling day.
It's a shoulder sling.
I don't need to use this hand. I have two perfectly good hands.
This day is going so great. I think I will challenge myself by eliminating one of my arms.
Yeah, I'm just going to hold that out. Yeah, that's because that's what you do when you're happy and healthy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's going to be interesting. All these guys are here for the spring.
Yeah.
So we'll get to, we'll at least get to see them play. And at least they'll get practices in. Otherwise, they were going to be super thin. Yeah. There's a couple preferred walk-ons at corner, and that would have been and George Hicks as well. And then there wasn't much else outside of that. So they needed these guys to come in, and they needed guys that could come in January as well. Otherwise, we'd have a running back situation on our hands.
Yep. So the only guy who's not coming early, at least according to Coug fan, is Armani Archie. And he was the high school kid.
Yeah.
So all the other JUCO kids are the JUCO kids, and then the gray shirt Gatlin Grisso. So they're all enrolled. They're all ready to go for spring practice, which is great. And I think that'll provide some clarity in terms of kind of what direction this is going.
Yeah.
Because I think really, the interesting thing is that there's a lot of ways you can kind of mix and match these parts to try and get maybe the best unit. And I think that might be kind of the way the Clays goes. I know we tend to think in terms of individual, matchups or, individual skill sets or whatever, but that secondary really is a unit, and they really do have to be able to work together. And So putting a guy next to Thompson who makes the most sense there, I think is, may not be the guy that sort of naturally comes to mind. And then, most of these guys we've never seen. So, you've got some young guys. You got like Tyrese Ross in there, who was a guy who looked pretty good coming out of high school, didn't play last year. He redshirted. We kind of know what Thomas can do. We know what some of his vulnerabilities are, particularly in coverage. Going to be super interesting in spring ball to see kind of who's rotating where, and honestly, that may not even. I mean, they've been known to move those guys around a bunch. So we'll see.
Yeah, but honestly, after which was thankfully in a win, but after what we saw against Stanford last year, we saw what it even again in Iowa State too. You saw the perils of a really short defensive backfield, and it's nice to see some of these guys in sort of a Seahawks-esque cornerback set. And it'll be interesting to watch. It definitely is a position where they could improve. Maybe not a nickel corner, but at outside corner for sure.
Yeah, they're gonna have a tough time improving at nickel. Hunter Dale was fantastic, and coming off the heels of Shalom Luani being right there, we really didn't miss a beat with that position. So hopefully they can find somebody sort of equally impactful, equally explosive to be disruptive the way Hunter Dale was.
Yep, absolutely. That'll be a fun position to watch come springtime. Something to look out for. Next week I haven't really thought about it. We'll figure out another position to cover. Probably another one on the defense. We've done 2 offense. We'll do another defense. Probably defensive line. Linebacker.
Yeah, defensive line sounds good.
Yeah, defensive line. That's always an interesting thing at WSU.
Yeah, I like that.
Moving on. We've already talked a bit about basketball, but not Cougar basketball. All we have left is to root and hope that the Huskies and Zags lose, because it can't root for our team to win, because it's a lost hope. But
that's
coming off a weekend, some very, very just par for the course loss, amazingly on point losses, exactly what you would expect. It was so okay, you're at home. I'm pretty sure Ken Pom had the margins within a couple points in both games, and it was just it is crazy how that weekend just kind of went as you would expect after having some probably 3 straight kind of crazy weekends that were kind of all over the place, and then you have this this kind of just in a ho hum. Poor Robert Franks has this 37 points senior night.
Yep.
Still
that was pretty much the most fitting end to his career, which, and I don't mean to say that in a way that's poking fun at it, because good for him. I'm glad he was able to, to go out with a strong individual performance, but it's here he is making everything, and the team can't play any defense, and they're just getting, really they have no hope of winning, even though he's, just going crazy. So, it was very on brand.
Yeah, we knew Oregon State was going to get a bunch of easy buckets, and by this time in the season, you obviously can have some surprises, but it's more likely that you have enough data where you kind of can have a good idea about what's going to happen, especially when teams have already played each other. And then, sure enough, less than a week after they play Oregon, they're playing Oregon again on Wednesday or today if you're listening to the podcast. WSU at the Pac-12 tournament / Pac-10 tournament has never been much to be excited about, even in the good years.
Horrible. It's been horrible.
Yeah, they've never made it to the finals. They hit the semifinals once with Tony, once or twice, maybe both years with Tony, or both good years. So it's just, but in a season like this, you're just just get it over with. Just or win 4. I don't care. Just get it over with early if you're not going to do that.
Yeah, it's yeah. I nothing quite like we're gonna get slapped around by Oregon again. Um, Oregon's playing really well right now. It's not just
Yeah.
it's not just that they are far superior. Dana Altman's just a really, really, really good coach,
Yeah.
and one of the articles, Michael Preston wrote an article about, Bill Moose and his role in this whole debacle. But down in the comments, there was kind of a discussion about, just, what Ernie actually had accomplished at Oregon, and it was, somehow this good gamble to take on Ernie. And I'm like, I don't think people quite realize that Ernie actually wasn't that good at Oregon. I mean, people point to the Elite Eight runs, and obviously you can't take that away from him, and whatever. But if you have a good understanding of sort of the randomness involved in the NCAA tournament, an Elite Eight run is really awesome. I mean, look, winning 3 games is great, but it's also like maybe not the best indicator of how good a team was in really in any given year.
Right.
And so people kind of constantly point to that, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't think people like kind of realize or think that much about what he actually did, and what he actually did wasn't like that impressive, particularly when you put it up against what Altman's done. So, Ernie was at Oregon for 10 years and made the NCAA tournament 4 times. So 4 times in 10 years.
Yeah.
Was eliminated in the first round twice as an 8-9 seed, made the Elite Eight twice as a 2-3 seed. Okay, like that's not bad, but like when you go through like his Ken Palm rankings, like the years they didn't make the tournament, you've got, they were 71st, they were 79th, 93rd, 66th, I mean, and then his last 2 years, of course, were a train wreck. And so, I mean, they were kind of up and down. And then you look at Altman, and he's making the tournament pretty much every year. And
Right.
he's got a Final Four to go with it. Anyway, it's just, and people want to point to facilities, and I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. You look at Ernie Kent's recruiting classes when he was at Oregon, and they were every bit as good, in consideration of like national rankings. They were pretty much on par with what Altman has done. Altman landing bowl this year was unusual. Like he's not landed generally, the 5-star top 10 type kids. Like he's just loaded up on, 2 or 3 top 100 kids each year. And that's basically what Ernie was doing, and those kids, I wrote about this way back, like the first or second year Ernie was with us. And I just kind of said, his best teams were senior laden. When he'd get those really touted kids, they didn't play very well for 2-3 years. And I think we see why. He doesn't, he's just not a very good coach. And, after 4 years, the kids finally figure it out. It's like when I watch Ernie's offense, I really don't have any idea what their actions are supposed to accomplish, what kind of shot they're supposed to be getting, where on the floor they're supposed to be attacking. And you hear things like CJ Ellaby in a story earlier this year said, yeah, coach just kind of puts us in spots and, trusts us to figure it out. And I'm like in theory, that sounds good, but that's also like, I mean, that's really, really close to the old roll the ball out trope. And so, yeah, it's, Oregon, they're going to kill us again. Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. I think your point's pretty interesting on looking at Ernie's body of work. And what I've always come back to is like if you're evaluating a mid-major or low-major coach to hire them, is how do they do in the totality of the season relative to the other teams in their league? Because that's the only kind of basis that you have of how they can compare to their peers. And I think that it show like when a guy maybe rolls through a couple conference tournaments and makes it to the NCAA tournament from a low major conference, that doesn't necessarily mean he's built this great program or anything like that. And I think we kind of got lost in that with Bone a bit because if you look at his like teams weren't really dominating the Big Sky by any means. But they were definitely like top half. But even the years he went to the tournament, he wasn't necessarily like the best team in the Big Sky, and he just won the tournament because a lot of the teams were kind of bunched around him. So he wasn't getting like his ass handed to him, of course. Like he was definitely like in towards the top anyway. But you see like it's kind of we come back to it, but like we obviously see that like Tony Bennett is just winning ACC titles like regularly now. It's like it's crazy. I think a lot of us thought, oh, it's not gonna work there in the ACC like what he does. But when he was at WSU of all places, he had a top 2 or 3 team
Right.
multiple times. and so it's just like, yeah, when you put a guy, when you look at the relative, like what their program has compared to the other programs and what they're able to do the entire season, not these end of year tournaments, which finally under Ernie, I think Oregon did really well in these end of season tournaments. I don't know if that's a thing. Like Oregon won the Pac-12 the tournament a couple times, but he never won the regular season title. Is that right? Like
I think that's right.
Yeah, I don't think he ever won the actual regular season title, which, in fairness, was an extremely tough league in the years he had his best teams. But also he didn't have his best teams when the league wasn't as good. So, and to your point, like it was, and you wrote this when he was hired, that his teams were led by 4th-year seniors who were like 4-star recruits.
Right.
So like Aaron Brooks and Malik Hairston and going farther back, like Ridnour never
Marty
made
Lunan.
Yeah,
Marty Lunan was a high recruit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, those guys. Bryce Taylor is a name that he never really panned out into like a really, really good player, but he was definitely a top 50 kind of recruit. So
and Hairston was probably one of their biggest, and he
was a 5-star kid. He was definitely
it took him till his senior year really to figure it out. Like he was a like just kind of a bust until then, and he was very good his senior year, which happened to be the same year as like when the Cougs rose up and UCLA was in their 3 straight Final Fours, and and it was, and Arizona was still good, and all these so it was just like a crazy couple seasons, and once again we'll go back to this season is like a complete 180. Jeff, do you think if someone other than Washington wins the Pac-12 tournament, will Washington make the tournament?
No.
So what we have is a very high because there's no other team that has a resume that Washington probably Arizona State has the best wins, but they have just fucked up so many times. Like they screwed it up. Like they had a solid resume going into Pac-12 play, and if they could have run through the conference, won 14 games or so, they probably would have sealed themselves a at-large bid, but that didn't happen. Washington's the only team that ran through the conference, but they didn't have much of anything to show for their non-conference schedule, and they've had obviously a very recent very embarrassing loss, and then another big loss to Oregon. So they've put themselves in a difficult position. I could see Oregon running through this thing, honestly, at this point.
I could too. I think, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if Oregon can, even if they don't necessarily win the tournament, if they can play themselves onto the bubble simply maybe by making it to the final or something like that. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. I mean, they're finishing.
Out. It probably would matter if they beat Washington in the semis or not, or early on or not.
They'd probably have to beat Washington again. Maybe even beat Arizona State just to kind of provide a little more separation there. I don't know. I'm not even looking at the brackets. So I have no idea what it looks like.
So it can be okay. So No, they're opposite sides. Oregon would not meet Washington until the final.
Okay.
They would they could meet Arizona State in the semis.
Okay. So that would be a good win for them.
So
I
they
don't
have
know. Like they're just
WSU, Utah, Arizona State, or Stanford, UCLA, but probably Arizona State. Uh,
they're just kind of coming around right now with, a whole bunch of guys who, and I know that, Bol got hurt, a while ago. So I mean, it's not like,
yeah,
they suddenly had to figure it out. But the team was built around him, and he's such a crazy, special, weird talent, in a delightful way, right?
yeah, yeah.
And it's, so to remove that, I think takes some adjustment. And everybody else was, the guys who were most, um, who had the skill to maybe take on that responsibility were young. You got a guy like Lewis King, and, it took him a while to kind of figure out how to be the guy. And now they've kind of put it together a little bit. They play really good defense. They score just enough, and that's a dang good team. That's a team that if they, if they somehow snuck into the tournament as an 11 seed, that, they are the proverbial nobody would want to play them kind of team.
Yeah, but it's tough. They got 12 losses. If they if
Yeah.
they if they lose in the tournament, they'll have 13 losses. And are you
Yeah.
taking a 13 loss team from uh, the worst Power Five conference?
I mean, probably not.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Probably not.
I mean, Arizona State, who knows? But like, they're not really on the bubble. And they don't really have the chance to play themselves onto the bubble in this tournament because
I don't think so.
they're not getting any marquee wins. Like it's not. This is so different from other years, and where it's almost to the point where like there was no reason to have it other than gosh, let's hope UW loses. But it's going to be crazy if the Pac-12 is a one bid league. Like I've been joking about it all season,
Yeah.
but it's now very much a reality.
No, it's pretty much guaranteed. I don't see any way that it's not. I mean, I sit here and say maybe Oregon could play their way out of the bubble, but I doubt it. Like,
I think
there's
but yeah, so Washington doesn't really have a chance for any good wins on the way to the final, because they're going to play Oregon State or Colorado, and
right.
then Arizona and USC.
And
And
none of those are impressive.
none of those are going to sway a committee, because Washington doesn't really have any big wins. Um, if they could have snuck by Gonzaga, that they probably have it right now, but
Yeah.
they almost did. But
But they didn't.
honestly, though, I think that's the one game a year I root for Washington.
Yeah. Boy, that is quite the moral dilemma. I don't know,
It's
man.
just so when I went to school,
I root for the Comet to obliterate anyway.
when I went to school, you know, the basketball team was sort of coming up, and they were getting more notoriety just because Dick Bennett was there, and then my senior year was Tony's first year, and you could see that there were so many Gonzaga shirts walking around campus because they were such like that by that time the program had gotten very popular, especially in Spokane and then just the rest of the state of Washington even, and there would just be some and the basketball players would take offense to it because like there's only one reason that kids weren't wearing a Gonzaga shirt
Sure. Yep.
and so they had a chip on their shoulder, and when it came to playing Gonzaga, and so in Dick Bennett's first year, that Gonzaga beat the hell out of him, and Dick Bennett's second year they lost by 2, when it was in Pullman, and then they got beat up again in Gonzaga. But then you saw Tony Benn's first year they beat him, his second year they beat him, not the third year, but I think they definitely had a chip on their shoulder when it came to playing Gonzaga, and it kind of went from like Gonzaga was like I wasn't like I was like yeah I'll root for them come tourney time because they're from Washington to being like screw them Like, we have fans on our campus that consider themselves like WSU football fans and Gonzaga like there was the running joke on campus was that Gonzaga was WSU's basketball program, and that pissed me off. I'm like, you can go watch our actual basketball team like play, and like, I don't know, we had this unique style, and maybe that drove people away, when there's 39, 37 games and stuff like that. But it just got really frustrating to me and just built this sort of hatred for Gonzaga to the point where it's almost like Gonzaga's just because how Gonzaga's basically ended the relationship with us, had to make this before that we had to do this thing where we played our home game in Spokane and all that, kind of the original when it's just at this point I'm like, you know what, when Washington plays them, I kind of like to see Washington beat Gonzaga, but now at this point looking back, I'm probably glad Washington lost because I would very much like to see them go roll through the Pac-12 like they did, and once again for the second time win the Pac-12 regular season tournament and not go to the tournament. So yeah,
I forgot that they were the ones Pac-12 last time too.
Yeah. Yep. So the last time they won Pac-12 regular season, they also missed the tournament. So, but that first 8-9, like USC or Arizona could definitely beat them, and so it's
anybody could beat them.
And plus they play a style. And
I think even we could beat them, Craig.
Well, okay. Well, we almost
get carried away.
Yeah, well, they almost did in Pullman with a huge crowd of 1,500. Right? It's like their biggest crowd of the year.
1,500 screaming, rabid Cougar fans.
But
the heat.
But Washington plays this style where their defensive style, and if you play fewer possessions, you're ripe to be upset. And Tony Bennett knows that better than anyone. And so you because it's already a very common strategy that has led to some upsets in the tournament is a team will just slow it down, because if you limit the number of possessions, you limit the opportunity for their athletic and skill advantage over you to come to fruition. So it'll be interesting to watch. I know UW's fans are firmly clenched right now. Their butts are firmly clenched right now because they pretty much need to win 3 games in 3 days, or this fun season they had is going to the NIT.
God, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
It's gonna be glorious.
Oh man, could be a great week in Vegas.
It could be. I might so my buddy Brent's down in Vegas right now, and he was saying that you could get an all session pass for $120 from your local third party ticket reseller.
Oh yeah, I can't imagine the third party Pac-12 tournament tickets are a hot commodity.
Yeah. Right so now. Anyway, but that would be worth the price of admission to just go and watch the Washington meltdown. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's I think I see what you're saying though with Gonzaga and Washington, because we dislike them both for the same reasons, right? I mean, it's the it's the snobbishness, it's the whatever, and with Washington, it's like, as much as we despise it, it's like on some level, if we're really honest with ourselves, we sort of acknowledge that it's legit. Right. I mean, Washington has all this money and all this institutional history and it's you just go, I hate it, but you're also I mean, whatever, I kind of get it, but with Gonzaga, it's you guys have been doing this for 20 years. I was at the first one at Key Arena, the first run. I was there for those 2 games with Santangelo and Richie Fromm and all those guys. And it's there were not 10,000 Gonzaga fans in that arena. I just want to point that out.
I mean, everyone
Now
was
there
rooting
were,
for Gonzaga.
and they beat Stanford.
Also, how the hell did a 10 seed get uh, the first round games in there? That you never see that happen anymore. Like a 10 seed
Or Minnesota. They beat Minnesota in the first game. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, where probably the majority of their alumni base lives, and like
right,
it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I always think I've thought about that many times. Like, how the hell was Gonzaga playing in Seattle?
Well, and they played Minnesota in the first game, and Minnesota had, if you remember, all kinds of suspensions, and they were in the middle of an academic scandal, I think it was, and the whole thing was just a train wreck. And so they beat, Minnesota. Minnesota plays like crap. And then there's 10,000 Gonzaga fans for the second round game. They are buying every damn ticket that they can find, and everybody's cheering for little Gonzaga. And it was great. And I'll admit, at the time, I was like, all right, this is cool.
Fun.
I'm down with this. Fine. Then they beat Stanford, and we got to laugh at Stanford, so that was cool. And then it's like, like ever since then it just became, oh, you're Wazoo, you're whatever, I don't know. It's annoying. So when Washington beats Gonzaga now in basketball, it's a little bit of Gonzaga getting a little bit of a comeuppance, and so I kind of get it. I'm torn because my deep-seated to the depths of my soul hatred for Washington is sort of is sort of up against my like irritation, like extreme irritation with Gonzaga, which is a little different.
Yeah, it's funny because it's kind of similar for me because I went like when I was growing up, I rooted for the Huskies and the Cougars. I mean, but like the Huskies were on TV more and
sure
had more regular success, and of course I followed the Rose Bowl year when I was like 12 for the Cougs, but the Huskies were regularly ranked in the top 20, and they then there was the Marcus Tuiasosopo year and all that stuff, and so there's a lot of things I remember. And then it was like this switch flipped when I decided I was going to WSU. I was like, no, screw them. And the Gonzaga part, it was like that kind of had to be built. Like, so it was like this. It like the UW part, you just kind of like, it's like once you're at WSU, like you get it. Like it's us versus them. But the Gonzaga part, I think, because there's still a lot of, especially Cougs that grew up in Spokane, a lot of like Gonzaga fans among Cougs and whatever. Just don't wear that stupid shirt with that guy made the half.
Yeah, dear God.
Just wear one of them, man. Because that means you're rooting for Gonzaga. We get it. Like, come on.
Yeah. I think we just offended all of Spokane.
Yeah. But you know what? Like, I can't stand them. And it was at least like, it was nice, like, because they went to the Elite Eight the first year and then the Sweet 16 the second year, and then couldn't get out of the second round when they were getting these higher
for like
seeds
forever.
For a long time, and that was like our one like saving grace. Like you can't you get it, you roll through the WCC, and then of course they went to the national title game, but thankfully they lost that one.
You know what they haven't done though? Gone to the title game twice. Still not as good as Butler, Gonzaga. You're still not as good as Butler.
Oh my God, the how mad Gonzaga fans got when Butler went to the Final Four the first time.
It was glorious.
Like, it's kind of funny. You just don't think about it, but they still think of themselves as the mid-major when they clearly don't have a mid-major program anymore.
Right.
But then just to give us that insight into their psyche that they still view themselves as a mid-major was interesting to me, because I think even by that point you're like, really, you still, like, you've been to the tournament, like, what, at that point it was like 12 straight years or something,
right?
And you still think you're a mid-major. Like, they had gotten at-large bids in that time, so it's like with like high seeds, 2 seeds, 3 seeds, they've gotten multiple 1 seeds at this point, and they're getting another one this year, and even with that loss, obviously they will. But Yeah, so it's funny. Now it's just it's truthfully it's crazy what that program has been built into, and it's annoying because our program is absolute shit, and that's also part of the hatred because they're only 75 miles away, and they're
Yep.
in Spokane, which ain't much better to recruit to than Pullman. So, um, yeah, so there's obviously a little pettiness in there, but it's a
Oh,
lot
one,
just
there's a lot of
a lot
pettiness
of
in there.
pettiness.
But I will own every last ounce of that pettiness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so yeah, yeah. So if you're let us know. I'm gonna start that Twitter maybe tomorrow. Podcast versus everyone Twitter,
Are we
or
the
let me know.
only
Or let,
podcast that didn't launch with a Twitter handle? Like went like 2 months of podcast without having a Twitter?
I know,
Isn't
or
that like
just
part of like Twitter start
or
like the start a podcast manual is like set up Twitter account?
Twitter, Instagram, all
Yeah,
that. We're bad at this.
we're bad.
But yeah, let me know if get at me on at the Craig Powers. Let me know if you're let me know about how you fall on UW versus Gonzaga, and not if you're a Gonzaga fan, Coug fan. Like I don't need. Obviously, your opinion is obvious there, but if you hate them both, let me know if anyone else like actually finds themselves rooting for UW. But yeah, so um, yeah, it's more fun talking about basketball when you don't have to talk about the Cougs as much. So.
Yeah, like see what
Uh,
we did there. Let's see, we talked about Oregon, we talked about Gonzaga, we talked about Washington. We didn't even like come up with
And
any
guess
previews of
guess
the
what
game.
we get to do next week? Talk about the fucking tournament. So
Yeah.
yes, which then you'll see Jeff and I nerd out next
Oh,
week.
we're gonna
That's
we're gonna nerd out so hard.
yeah, yeah.
So I like yeah
You're gonna
we're
hear the word Ken Palm Reiki like
oh,
8 times at least.
and you're
Uh,
gonna love it.
offensive efficiency. Uh,
That's
yeah,
right. Four factors.
absolutely. I was
Uh,
totally gonna. Oh, and stay tuned for in future episodes. Just as a teaser, Milan Aqua led the WAC in scoring this season. So we're gonna have to do a rundown of guys who
yeah.
left the Cougar program under Ernie Kent and see how they're doing. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Good
anyway,
luck
so
finding some of them.
so yeah, Pac-12 tournament. We just talked up Oregon, so watch the Cougs go out and beat them
Yes.
somehow.
No, they won't.
No, they won't.
They'll get smoked. That like I am more confident in the idea. Like this last weekend, it didn't surprise me that they played both of those games pretty tough. Like they, kind of coming off, to some degree being embarrassed a little bit, between the losses to not even a little bit, a lot, right? With the losses to Stanford and Cal.
Oh yeah.
So it didn't shock me. It was the last weekend at home, senior day, all that stuff. Did not shock me at all that they played Oregon and Oregon State pretty tough. But this one, I would not be shocked if this one was just a roll over and die situation. If they really just get run off, the antiseptic environment.
Oh,
Oregon sort of rolling right
they
now.
do have it is the last game of the night, which
Yeah.
is helpful when it's at least not the 11 a.m. start
Well,
where
except
like
it'll probably tip off at like 8:30 or 8:45 and not 8 o'clock. You know,
yeah, but you
like
get more of the gamblers in there for the
that's
8:30.
true. That's true. That's what we really need is like some of those drunk gamblers to just stumble on in and start heckling
Some
everybody.
like and they took the Cougs to cover for some goddamn reason.
How many people come in and start heckling Ernie Kent?
Oh man. All right, man.
Yeah.
Sports. Woo. All right,
Yay, sports. We did
we
an
got
hour of
we
sports.
got
Well, not
super
all of it, but
well,
yeah,
most of it. Super
most of
deep.
it.
I kind of want to continue the sports train here because there was a pretty. It
Is
was so
this?
this is
It's kind of
sports and
sports,
pop culture and not really politics, but
but it's
I
kind
mean, it
of
is sort of politics.
social
Yeah,
justice,
if
kind
this
of
is social, that we can get
equity.
we can get social things involved. So this is
Yeah.
the combination sports, politics, pop culture segment, which we're calling Becky is bringing down USC. Aunt Becky is bringing down USC. So I'm sure most of our readers have seen the story. It does, even if you like, I don't know. Like, so the FBI arrested a bunch of parents of students at potential student athletes at universities for bribing test officials to change their scores, and then also bribing universities to get their students changed to possibly a status as student athlete, just in an effort to get them into these more prestigious schools. Jeff, you might have to correct me on this, but so what's the thinking there? Is like because the student athlete might have like lower admissions requirements, or
Yeah, so I mean, the way I understand it is that most schools have a certain number of admissions set aside
wait,
for
hold on,
athletes.
one thing. Okay, continue.
You had to open up the side piece. Uh, yeah, my understanding is they sort of have a certain number of admissions set aside for athletes, basically. Some schools, the admission standards might be a little bit lower. I don't think it drops below like some kind of threshold of what they would accept, but I think there's a little more like flexibility there. Like basically it's okay, if you're providing value to the university in this way, we're able to like, overlook maybe some blemishes in your record in order to get you on campus, right? And so it just kind of can get you looked at, can get you fast tracked. You might be it because they've set aside those admission spots for athletes. You maybe don't have to compete. You're not competing with the
Right.
student population at large. And that was kind of the big thing. The FBI guys, the not the FBI guy, the U.S. attorney who was talking said, it's like, look, college admissions is a zero sum game, right? Like, this kid gets in, that kid's not in.
Right.
If this kid gets in by fraud, then a kid who deserves it doesn't get in. And so that's where the criminal aspect came from.
Well, and then if you want to get more of the political aspect is like, so or just so you all these parents who are bribing, obviously they're wealthy millionaires to even more, and so their kid has had plenty of opportunity given to them, probably private schools, probably all the tutors and whatever, and you still can't get them in without cheating.
Yeah,
Maybe you're sending your kid into somewhere they don't need to be. Like,
maybe.
like maybe they going to Chico State is fine. Like they don't need to go to UCLA or USC or like
Or
it
Yale.
or Yale.
That was part of this.
Like where we hear about these Ivy League schools where the kids are just feel these intense pressures to perform and like it, and then you want to send your kid who you had to like buy a test score and then buy off a university official to get them in. Like you
Yeah.
just like is the Yale degree that valuable? You're already millionaires. Like
Yeah.
what do they need? What do they need the Yale degree for? Like just let them go to the state school and then come back out, and then you have the money to help them find whatever job they want. Like what are you trying to say? You're setting your kid up for failure. But in the process you think you're being a good parent by giving them this great opportunity to go to this great school.
Yeah, it's kind of bananas. One of the questions that was asked, I was listening to another podcast that was talking about it, and they were saying like, well, why didn't they just do it the old-fashioned way, which is give the school a large donation so that the school will accept your child, because that's like the time-honored.
Well, I think there was some donations tied to the changing of the status.
Yeah, I mean, I know that like they had to give money to this like fixer dude
Yeah.
to do it, but anyway, I was just like, it was probably honestly cheaper to pay the fixer dude. Like,
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
then it would
probably.
be, like is a $20,000 donation going to get your kid into Yale? Probably not,
But
right?
but you
Like
but you know what? But you know what the $20,000 donation doesn't get you? Felicity Huffman
that is true.
is in was arrested and put on $250,000 bail.
Right?
And uh, Aunt Becky's Lori Laughlin's husband, who this is a very 90s thing, because so her husband is the Massimo guy. Like, do you remember
Oh
Massimo?
yeah, no, I remember Massimo.
I didn't even know that. And he got arrested and put a $1 million bail.
Oh,
And she
that's
was in
so
Vancouver
fantastic.
filming a movie or something.
Oh,
And so she had to come back and so I think she's on house arrest or something. But
yeah.
it's crazy. Like I am positive when they were making these bribes that they never thought anything like that could have happened.
Oh no, they probably didn't even think they were doing anything illegal, to be honest. I'd be surprised if they thought what we are doing is criminal, because they generally don't think. But, I kind of like, so then I start going through and I go, okay, so this is great. I mean, good. They call a big press conference and, talk about all the people they've arrested, and that's lovely. But when we're living in a world where Paul Manafort does what he did and gets 4 years in prison, like, I mean, what are we looking at here for these guys? Like a month, 2 months?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm sure
When it's
it'll just
all said and done, when this
it'll
all shakes
be
out.
house arrest. I don't think I bet there won't even be jail time. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But honestly, like if you talk about why is this a crime? Why is this? Because here's the thing: is like especially in the like in both situations. So when you're having your kid, like you said, zero sum game here. You have your kid's test score manipulated. That means they're making their test score higher than another kid.
Yeah.
They're obviously good. Like there's a certain level of um, quantitative part of admissions where there's an automatic like, well, this kid's this high and then he has this score and he has this GPA and whatever, where they're kind of like automatic. And so you're getting to that point and you're stealing a bid, as we would say,
Yeah.
a tournament from someone else. And then you're talking when you're getting to the level of the student athletes. Um, there's no secret that a lot of the scholarships and a lot of the admissions that go to student athletes are to people who would otherwise never have an opportunity to go to college.
Yep.
And you with your millions of dollars who could send your kid to any other college, like any other college they want to go to that isn't a top tier public school or top tier private school. Like they could go anywhere else and they've given every opportunity to go. Like their chances of going to college were 100% as soon as they were born. And then you're taking the opportunity to go to one of these elite schools from another kid, and that's where it gets despicable, and where you're like, let them do some time or pay some fines or do like because like come on, like I said before, your kid already had the opportunities, man. Like and he's still gonna have the opportunities going to you know Cal State school is fine. Like you can go to Cal State. You don't they can't get into UCLA, can't get into USC, can't get into Yale. I mean, heck, there's like a million other private schools that would take them. So so it doesn't matter like if they go to Yale. Like so they were I don't know. I get it. They're trying to be a great parent, but I think you're being a little misguided in your efforts.
It's going to be fascinating to see what happens to the kids. How many of these kids it comes out that knew what was happening, knew what was
Mhm.
going on. They did say that on this podcast I was listening to, they did talk about how one parent didn't want their kid to know what they were doing. And so when they were trying to fix their test score, they were like paying the person to change the
Their
answers
yeah.
after the fact. So that the kid went in, took the test and left, and then thought that they had scored whatever they had scored.
Yep.
Can you imagine being that kid and finding out? Like, wait a minute, was I that kid? I was that kid. Oh my God. like my mom had my
I totally
score
didn't
fixed.
think I scored a 1460.
Yeah.
What the hell? I knew it.
Like my whole world, like my whole sense of self has been completely turned upside down now that I didn't score a 34 on the ACT. Like, I don't know. It's
Yeah, I don't even know what the SAT scores are now. I think they're different than when I was in school. But...
They did go back. They went back down to the 16.
Okay.
They went up for a while to 2,400. Now they're back.
And that outdated reference became dated again, or less.
Yes.
It became on
relevant
again.
We're relevant again.
So,
good job, Greg, on being relevant.
So Felicity Huffman, I think most people know her from Desperate Housewives, but you may remember her from, so Aaron Sorkin apparently loves news type shows, and long before he made The Newsroom, and even before he made The West Wing, he made a little show called Sports Night.
Yeah.
Remember this show?
I do. I wasn't a real close watcher of it, but
I've seen mostly after the fact on reruns and stuff. I do remember it being on, but actually a pretty good show. Amanda and I have watched it. It's only like not even 2 full seasons. It's like 34 episodes or maybe 45. So maybe it is 2 full seasons. But Felicity Huffman was on that. And she was like one of the main characters. And then she went on to do Desperate Housewives and whatever else. And so that's why it's another 90s tie, because that movie is straight out of the late 90s.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a pretty good show. I've never watched The Newsroom. I've only seen that fucking shitty take on millennials.
Yeah. Well, that's if you watch. So I've watched that show. Newsroom's great. So just as a quick side note, you got to watch that in context, and it makes a lot more sense. When you take it out of context, and it becomes like this
viral meme,
conservative screed against snowflakes. It's different. Anyway.
Yeah, Sorkin's in a lot of shit. Like a lot, like A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
And, he wrote apparently but he got his like Oscar for The Social Network, the Facebook movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's been around a while. Wrote a lot of stuff that is very culturally relevant, and then also hired a felon.
Yeah. So two other things really quick. Number one, if you like Aaron Sorkin, he was on Wait, Don't Tell Me about a week ago, I think.
Yeah, I saw that.
A week and a half ago. So that was awesome. It was very funny, as that show typically is. And then Felicity Huffman is married to William H. Macy.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that until today when I kept saying his name.
And their kids, the kids are their kids.
Yep.
And whoopsie doodle.
But I don't think William H. got arrested.
He did not.
So he was not involved, apparently.
Apparently not involved. Apparently,
Felicity was going off.
She went rogue.
She was being a desperate housewife.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, she's not a housewife. Very successful woman on her own right.
That is true. But if you watch the housewife show on Bravo, then Real Housewives, like most of those people aren't actually housewives either. So.
And one of those on the New Jersey one, the husband and wife, one of the husband and wives both had to go to prison for tax evasion.
Yeah.
And they had to take turns going to prison. So I wonder if Aunt Becky is in for something like that as well. And Massimo guy.
Massimo guy.
That's
he's going to go to prison, and he's going to go, do you know who I am? And they're going to be like, no. He's like, I'm the Massimo guy.
Like, oh yeah, from like the 90s.
Like, you mean like from the 90s? Yeah.
And I'm married to Lori Loughlin.
I'm married to Aunt Becky.
Full House.
Full House. Have you ever watched Full House?
So Jeff, is Full House any good?
No,
Yeah, it's terrible.
it's
It's so
terrible.
bad.
I used to watch it though when I was a kid.
Oh yeah,
It
yeah.
is kind of funny now though. So Sarah watches the new ones, and so like sometimes I'm like laying in bed and she's got it on, and but I do think it's like kind of charming in a corny way because they are fully aware of their corniness. Like 25 years ago maybe they weren't, or 20 years ago maybe they weren't. It was just sort of like the genre, right? The Friday night family sitcom. But now it's like they definitely are sort of playing up the nostalgia and the corny nostalgia, and
Well, yeah,
it's not so bad.
it was so like corny like that. Like if Bob Saget, when it was done, would do like a stand-up bit and he would say a cuss word, like people would
Oh
be,
my
"Oh
gosh.
my God, Bob Saget said fuck."
Yeah.
So he's kind of made like, I think most of his like appearances after that have been him just being super vulgar and the
Yeah,
complete
just
opposite
blowing
of
everybody's mind.
Full House.
Yeah.
Like, and like that's how he's like made a living since
Yeah.
then. So it's
Yeah.
just like, because I don't, he's not on the Fuller House, is he?
He
Is he?
makes cameos. So
Okay.
so the Fuller House is basically centered around the girls, and the gentlemen make appearances here and there, but that's it.
Are the twins on it?
No. No.
Yeah, I was gonna
They
say,
are not. At
yeah.
least not that I've seen. I've not watched that closely, but I don't think so. I don't think they want to scare anybody away.
Well, yeah, but the middle girl had like a rough patch. Is like
Yeah.
she had, but and then yeah, so then Candace Cameron and her brother that makes all the Christian movies and all that.
Yeah. It's a very wholesome show.
Yeah, it's very awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's pretty funny. Like it's like this story would be one thing. I mean, it kind of like at first it was like it probably would have like been interesting for sports nerds just to be like, oh, USC's cheating, like because USC, UCLA, they like but like they're not like what are they cheating by? Like the sports program like wasn't really like cheating by letting in someone who's not going to play for your teams at all
Right.
whatsoever.
Right.
Um, but then you brought in this more of kind of more general interest aspect of it, where you've seen a lot more news services pick it
Yeah.
up because like you have these very famous people.
The
Um,
kickbacks were huge though. Like, did you see that? Like the Yale, whatever the Yale coach was, Yale tennis coach, or I'm probably gonna get sued for slander, but I don't remember. Whichever the Yale coach was, got like 400 grand for
yeah,
participating in this. Like that is like I mean I don't know what the Yale whatever coach makes in a year in salary, but it can't be any more than that.
no,
Like
no way, no way.
so they're like double. Listen, it's a basic rule of economics, right? Like anytime there's a market and it's forced underground, like you're gonna get like these like crazy outsized payments. It's how you get college athletes shaving points and stuff, because
Yeah,
it's like it's what they're currently doing isn't quite lucrative enough, and there's this other black market that is unregulated, and so they're like, what's it worth for someone for their kid to get admission to Yale? I mean, to be honest, if 400 grand doesn't seem like a bad deal considering what you would get out of being a Yale grad. I mean, that's
yeah.
like, it's pretty wild to kind of think of what the value of, or at the very least the perceived value of that kind of a degree is.
Well, I would think like if you're already like a lot of these like families were like there was already like CEOs of companies and stuff like you don't already have those connections because the whole point of these Ivy League, Stanford things is the connections that you get
Yes,
in the
yes.
school. So like you're telling me like you maybe they didn't realize that like you probably already know all these people. Like if you wanted your kid to work at Google or whatever, like
Yeah.
you probably know the people that can get him a job there. So it's like, it's you probably were in your love for your child.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a
Seriousness.
pride. There's probably a pride
Well,
element to it.
it's less. Yeah, it can be less the love for the child and more of the you want to be like, little Benny is going to Yale.
Right.
Yeah, you want to be little Benny is going to UMass Amherst.
It's just an older version of when they, fight over the exclusive preschools when they're 4.
Oh, they've probably been doing this whole time, but they could probably pay off the preschool people easy, you know?
Yeah.
Like, or they'd just be so, oh my God, you're Aunt Becky. Yeah, you can come here. Oh, you're Massimo guy? Yeah, I think I had a shirt. Well, it was a knockoff
Yeah.
shirt. It
Yeah.
wasn't the real one.
So they
But I
sell
think the,
those at Target? Yeah. I don't know.
yeah. All right, man. We got a couple minutes here. Not
Yeah.
it's actually a time and
With our self-imposed 90-minute limit.
but you got a good kid story? I don't.
I do actually. It's funny. Like I spend all week like walking around thinking, what am I gonna do for the kids story? Like it's got to be funny and it's got to like be whatever. So anyway, so last night I finally got my funny kids story. Okay, so Tristan, my middle son, who a lot of these stories revolve around him because he is just he's a total character. And so I go into his bedroom, and every night he is still young enough that he still wants me to tuck him into bed each night. So I walk in there and cover him up with his blankets and tuck him in and, say a little prayer with him and then, turn off the light and he goes to bed. And so we do this every night. Well, last night I go in there and he's sitting up in bed and he goes, Dad. And I go, what? And he goes, what's a past tense verb? And I go, kid's 9, right? And I go, okay, well, and I'm an English teacher, right? I got to be able to answer this. And so I'm trying to think of, how do I explain this in a way that, makes sense to him, right? And I said, so a verb, so I figure I should probably start by defining a verb, right? Like what that is. And then we could say, okay, a past tense verb is a kind of verb, right? It's a different kind. So I say, well, a verb is a word that describes an action, like a thing that somebody does. So like, for example, I'm just kind of thinking and I see a soccer ball on his floor and I think, okay, kick. So I go, okay, so a verb is kick. Like I kick the ball. It's something that I do, right? And he goes, okay, yeah. And I said, okay, so past tense means it's a verb. It's a form of the word for something that you've done in the past. So the past tense verb or the past tense version of kick would be kicked, like you kicked the ball in the past, right? And he goes, oh, okay, I get it. And I go, yeah. And then he goes, so like farted is past tense. And I go, yes, farted is past tense. And then I look over and I realize what he is doing. He has a Mad Libs book. Okay. So now he doesn't do the Mad Lib books the way you're supposed to do them, which is, give all the words and then fill all the words in and then read the story as a surprise. Yeah. He just likes to write the words in as he goes to make the story as funny as possible for himself. So without further ado, let me read to you the Mad Lib of a 9-year-old from Rick and Morty's Mad Libs.
Ooh,
are you familiar with Rick and Morty?
Very much. We can talk about that on a different episode.
Okay, so Rick and Morty's Mad Libs. Here we go.
This is called... he should not be watching Rick and Morty. Come on, man. He doesn't watch Rick and Morty. No, this was a Mad Libs book. We actually picked this up at the Sub Pop store at the airport. Okay.
We were on our way to California. The kids needed something to do. Their phones were out of batteries or something, and so I bought them a Mad Libs. I'm like, here, entertain yourselves, and it actually worked. So okay, so here we go. Mad Libs, a squanchy story. I don't know what squanchy is. Maybe
it's I do.
Is it appropriate for my 9?
Well, it has many meanings. It's too hard to explain. Just keep going.
Okay, got it. Okay, all right, so here we go. A squanchy story. Let me destroy you a story about the time Rick Birdperson and I squanched a ton of Galactic Federation butts. One night, Rick drank too much pee and picked a fight with a federal Toy-saurus. Suddenly, we were outnumbered 999,999 to 3. Thankfully, I always carry at least one spare rail gun for when things get squanchy. This one's supposed to be an animal, but like a good 9-year-old, he put down butt again. Butt person and I covered Rick's back while he created a bomb out of a paperclip and a vial of corrosive dragons. During the farty explosion that followed, we snuck out the back butt and hijacked a plane. But the Federation put up a barrier made of butts to prevent our escape. We throttled the boosters to full squanch and all yelled, "Fart farts!" as we farted through the barrier and hurtled into the safety of the My Butt, which is a place. It was a close call. We only squanched out of there by the skin of our butts, of course. The end.
So, first of all,
my kid has a great vocabulary, Craig.
As someone who has watched every episode of that show 10 times at least each, that's some pretty on-brand Rick and Morty stuff. Going with the butts and farting. Like, it's butts and farting are very much a part.
Very much Rick and Morty.
Comedy in that show. Like, the main character, Rick, is a chronic alcoholic and burps periodically throughout his talking. They go to they're going between different dimensions in the show, and they end up one where it's just a bunch of farting butts, like, that are islands. And then, like, it's just like, and there's just like parts where Rick just lets out a fart and, like, just in the middle of a conversation. So it's fairly on brand. Like, I feel like Tristan may have seen that show at one of his friends' houses.
Yeah, he probably has. I will say that filling up a Mad Libs with butts and farts also is really the apple not falling far from the tree either. Yes. So I will definitely admit that 100% that when I did Mad Libs, it was pretty much farts and butts.
As we've said before, Jeff is an excellent parent.
Yeah, 100%. I have my kid has an expansive vocabulary. I am an excellent parent. My kid is destined for Yale.
Well, you gotta pay, man.
Not my kid. I won't have to pay. He's gonna get it on his own merits as a rower, soccer rower.
So on the topic of butts, my poor daughter is she was a very regular pooper for a good amount of time, like just like 3 times a day, like, and you could like put it to a clock, like. You didn't have to go check her diaper, which the most in like babies have like there's this like indignity where like your parent there's always this person just grabbing you and sticking their nose in your butt and like did you go like yeah. Like just grabbing you, pulling your pants down, lifting your diaper out if they don't want to stick their nose in your butt. That's before it gets stinky when they start eating solid food. When they start eating solid food, there's no mystery about it.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
So she had been pooping less, and then yesterday it was just 4 enormous poops, like before lunch, like just like she was clearing everything out. Just like I'd change her, put her down, half an hour later, be like, God, what is that smell? Like, oh my God, she did it again. Like, again. Like, so poor kid. We've talked to other parents where they say they have like their kids have pooping days and non-pooping days.
Oh yeah, it's not unusual for a kid to not poop for a while.
We had a friend who like her kid would regularly go like 7 to 9 days without going.
Oh.
But B's always been pretty regular, so we knew when she was only going once a day that something was coming. And then when she woke up that morning, it was just a diaper. Somehow the diaper held. Good job, Huggies. The diaper held.
That's where the extra money goes.
And she's in like an in-between diaper size right now. So it's like if you do it too small, it leaks, but it's kind of big, so that can leak too. So it's just like, just no big dumps, kid. Just regular sized dumps.
Yeah.
And it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's also got a tooth coming in, so she's been super scratchy.
Little cranky.
I took a great picture of her just like crying, like huge tears, and sent it to Amanda while she was at work. Like, here, this is what you're missing. But yeah, so she's a little bit of cranky. It's a Tylenol night in the household. Yeah, so nothing as good as Rick and Morty Butts Mad Libs, which is like very on brand. Actually, knowing Tristan, he probably has never seen it, but just had an inkling based on the artwork on the Mad Lib. But yeah, Rick and Morty's definitely not a show for kids, even though it's animated.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn funny show.
Yeah.
With very annoying fans. So it's like the Seahawks with the 12s. Had some really good teams, but some of the fans just became so annoying that you're like, I like the Seahawks, but I'm not them. I'm not them. Like, just don't. I like Rick and Morty, but I'm not those dudes over there, like, who think every episode is some greater meaning, and like the creators are geniuses. Always there's something genius that they're up to all the time. Like, no, there's a lot of fart jokes, and I think kind of like where most of it is headed.
Maybe on a future podcast we'll do a Mad Lib on the podcast.
Ooh, that's a good idea. I also
That'd be pretty funny.
I think as trying to think what's it on. I don't know. You should go try to find a Rick and Morty episode, and then we'll talk about it next week.
That sounds good. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Do that.
All right, man. So yeah, again, if you have suggestions for how we should rate our beer, podcast versus everyone at gmail.com or at me at the Craig Powers. I might start a Twitter account. I'm really bad at following through at things like that, but maybe Jeff will. He can get back in the Twitter game that way.
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm at the Craig Powers. If you have any questions or comments, or you just like to see the picture of the beer I'm drinking before the podcast even comes out, oh my God, because that's so interesting. And then
I look forward to it.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course you do.
Of course I do.
You got to prepare your comments.
Yeah.
And then whatever, Cougs Center's cool. Go listen to the podcast that the old WSC football blog guys are doing.
Yeah.
They'll probably be more about sports than ours. Very smart guys.
Smarter than us.
Coug Sutra and Sean Hawkins. So
yeah,
they were doing this before we were, man.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe not Jeff, but me. But yeah, so thanks for listening again. It'll be a great week last week. I hope you all came back, and I hope you made it this far. But we'll be episode 10 next week. We have some big things planned. No, we don't.
Our 10th anniversary episode. Wait, no, that's not. I don't know.
All right. Well, yep. I think that's good. I think we're good. All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Goodbye.